Yeah, but then she's going to come in and start talking.
Well, then just ignore. If that's not what you.
Eli Howard's the next question.
It's kind of hard to ignore whenever she's annoying as a door.
Hey, you know what? It's called self-control, man.
A door salesman.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So today we're starting a new unit. What is? Oh my gosh, what is today? We're not starting a new
We
unit.
started
We're
it yesterday.
continuing it. That's right.
It's Friday the 13th.
No, not yet. But
Wait,
So-
this is gonna be further.
there.
Today's the 13th.
So on yesterday, you did some vocabulary and you did a map. Okay.
Yes.
So based on that information, just on those couple of things, what do you think we're going to be talking about?
The politics.
Location. Or
Okay, but what about the locations?
Politics and locations.
events in history.
Okay, events in history. Like, what would California have to do with Arkansas?
Scandals.
It's on like the trade.
Maybe.
Okay.
Well, what were some of the vocabulary words?
Antebellum.
Rivalry.
Rivalry and antebellum.
What's it called? Civil War.
Civil War. So, but antebellum means what? Before the Civil War. So that's actually, and this is called antebellum Arkansas, right? So we're actually talking about the time period before the Civil War. Okay. And so apparently you need to wear it. That's what it's for. Okay. So you need to, apparently there's some rivalry going on within Arkansas, outside of Arkansas. I don't know. You're maybe.
Or both.
Maybe. Okay. So then there's actually a lot to this unit, and we've kind of broken it down into different sections. But yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're definitely going to talk about politics because we're not a state at this point. We haven't become a
We're a
state.
territory.
We're a territory. That's right. So that's what we're going to talk about. So for the next couple of days, we're going to talk about.
Did Americans live here though?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about, and that's what these notes are on. Okay. So rough and tumble politics. That's the title of your notes. So if you don't have that down, you need to. Okay. If there's any up here, okay. All right. So rough and tumble politics. Now, at this point in history, Arkansas would have been considered the wild, wild west. Yeah, isn't that kind of funny? I mean, we're like the Midwest right now, or mid-Southwest again. But back then, in the early 1800s, we were the Wild West because we hadn't moved that far out yet. Okay, and that's kind of where we get the idea of this rough and tumble politics. Okay, all right. So here we go. So before we could become a state, we actually had to organize the territory and get ready to become a state. So all that you see here on the board is what you should write down. And if you think you need to add something while I'm talking, definitely do that. Okay? So before we could become a state, we had to organize the territory. So running a small, well, I guess, for one person to have all of Arkansas, it's a lot of land. And so we break it down into what? So
Counties.
regions, and specific counties, right? And today I think there's like 60 counties. There might be more actually,
I think
but
it's like 74.
74, 75, something like that. So, and that is to help organize and govern smaller pieces of land. Okay. So who's at the top of Arkansas? Like who's the leader of Arkansas?
The governor.
The governor, and he's got a helper or she's got a helper, the lieutenant governor. And then each county has, well, each city has a mayor, right?
Judges.
Neighborhood watch.
Possibly, sure. So the smaller the land area, the easier it is to organize, okay, or manage, okay. So that's what we're having to do in Arkansas. before, we'll say the 1820s, 1830s. Okay. So the first, so we have like a little subtitle. It says the first capital, the first government. Our first capital was not in Little Rock. It was actually a place called Arkansas Post.
Is Arkansas?
It's still around, but it's not like Little Rock. It's not huge. It's
It's kinda
more
like
of like a
Abandoned,
museum,
kinda.
kind of. Yeah. No, Post. What do you think of when you hear the word Post?
Like festival.
Mail post.
Like
Like
mail post, right?
Like a trading post or
Like a trading post. That's what it was for specifically. So Arkansas Post was not only for trade, but yeah, you think of the post office is where you post mail, and then the trading post was that for that as well.
So a post.
Yeah, and it was on the Arkansas River, and that's why the capital was there for the time, because it was easier to access on the river because it was much faster. Mhm. And our first territorial governor, and these gentlemen were appointed by the presidents. Okay, they didn't run for they didn't run for governor. They were appointed by the president. Okay, so our first territorial governor was James Miller, and he actually was not very excited about his appointment. But well, I guess you could refuse what the president is asking you to do, but he didn't. So he was from New Hampshire, and he was being sent out to the Wild West in the Western Territories, where what they called savages were living out there, referring to Native Americans who lived there. Okay. So he's from New Hampshire, and his wife wasn't very excited. She didn't come when he came down either. So he took a sweet time getting here too. He's like, yeah, I'll take it. But it took him like 6 months to get here. And that's because he was procrastinating, not that it was hard to get to, which it was kind of.
But he could go
What year was this in?
I'm not sure what the year. Before 1836, I know that for sure.
Okay.
So in the meantime, this guy, the secretary of the Arkansas Territory, a guy named Robert Crittenden, stepped in and said, while we're waiting for James Miller to arrive and govern, I'll do it. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Is it now like people have to elect you
Yes.
to be governor?
Yes.
And also, how is it hard to change a state's capital?
Maybe at the beginning it's not so much, but today it probably would be, since it's been there for so long. So there'd have to be some kind of natural disaster or something to really require it to be moved. Okay. 1819. Okay. Yeah. So the secretary, Robert Crittenden, was actually very ambitious. He was an ambitious character, an ambitious man. And ambition, what do you think that means? If you have
adventurous.
Could be adventurous, yeah.
I'm curious.
Maybe curious. Wanting more. I think that it has drive and has motivation to go after it. So sometimes that means someone's willing to do anything, whatever it takes to get what he or she wants. And that was kind of Robert Crittenden, if you do a little bit of study on him. So he actually had a lot of friends, but he also made a lot of enemies because of his ambition. Yes. Okay. So he will definitely be a big part of Arkansas history, or the beginnings of Arkansas history. He actually has a county named after him, Crittenden County, up in northeast Arkansas, I think.
I've been there.
Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Did he kill me?
Maybe. We'll get there. We may get there today. All right. So, yeah. So we're waiting on our first territorial governor. Robert Crittenden's like, well, he's not here, so I'll just step in. Because he actually wanted to be governor of Arkansas. He thought that would be a cool gig. And so he kind of took over while they were waiting for him.
Isn't there like a congressman for each state?
Yes. So here we've got a beautiful portrait of Mr. Miller and Mr. Crittenden on the right here.
It was scary.
I know, right? It was a little scary. You want the lights on or off?
Off.
All right. So, and Mr. Crittenden was extremely young. I mean, they were probably all relatively young. Maybe not Mr. Miller, but Robert Crittenden was. Just wanted to give you a visual so you kind of get him in your head there.
Robert Friedman, he looks like my dad.
Oh, yeah?
He stared at for a long time.
Oh, I don't know what your dad looks like. Okay. So organizing the territory, again, like I said before, in order to become a state, the territory has to be organized in a fashion where you can manage not only the people, but the land, and it takes money to run a state, okay? And one of the first things that they have to do is have leaders in place, just like we talked about James Miller, but they also had to elect what's called the First General Assembly. Now, in other states, they're called legislatures. They're the same thing. The General Assembly, and if you want to put this off to the side, are the people who make the laws. That's why I have an icon here. So today in Arkansas, we have representatives in the General Assembly from certain areas of Arkansas that come together and create laws for Arkansas.
Don't they add a new law every year?
They're doing it all the time. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're either taking away laws that aren't relative or relevant anymore, or adding new ones when new issues come up.
Kind of like that Sunday one.
Right.
Yeah, there was another one that said
You can beat your wife on Sunday.
You can beat your wife on Sunday.
and there was also one where you couldn't have ice cream in your pocket.
Yeah, there's
And
some weird laws
laws.
out there, but there's usually a history behind that. This is really interesting. They're like, you can't, I know there was a law, you can't walk your cows, or you can't have your cows outside the church or something like that. It's interesting things. Or you can't play cards on a Sunday. That kind of thing.
That's for
Well, half of
It's a religious thing, yes.
My parents play cards on Saturday,
Oh.
Fridays.
So here's the thing. Robert Crittenden held the election of the First General Assembly, which is the governor's job, not his. So he also appointed friends and people who were loyal to him as leaders. Yes. So what he's trying to do is put people in place so that someday he can be governor.
So he's trying to like make them his friends and like
No, they are.
Some of them are his
to like
friends.
help him win.
Yes. Yeah.
I would do that too.
Now it's kind of illegal because
Oh.
you don't want unqualified people
Bias.
leading your state.
But he worked.
But
Let me
there's
pivot.
there's things that you have to go through. You have to be like, I work for the government, right?
You do.
Yeah, I'm a
Yes.
state employee,
Public.
education through the state. In order for me to be here, I had to pass many tests to prove that I am qualified for the job. Now, they didn't really have that kind of thing set up back then, and that's why Robert Crittenden was able to do what he did. And he's certainly not the only one who's done that. Okay.
That's like appointing the maker of like chlorine gas as like the medical, leader. Okay, that's not good.
All right. So the General Assembly is made up of two groups of people. Kind of like our Congress in Washington, D.C. has the House of Representatives and the Senate. So our General Assembly has two groups of people, the House of Representatives and the Legislative Council. And again, their job is to create laws for the territory. And laws are in place to help govern whatever situations may come up. And that could be like a law to tax the people and how much to tax the people, and that kind of thing. Because you have to have taxes to gain money to pay for things that the government should be paying for, like roads and canals,
You know what tax is for?
railroads, things like that. Yes, ma'am?
So America is really just like a citizen owned or a citizen, you know,
It should be a citizen-owned
working-
country.
That's why it's democratic.
And that's why we have taxes.
That's what it should be. It's not always that way.
That's why we
We
have
pay the
taxes, so that way we
officers.
have to pay them.
Salary.
And then they're supposed to, right, do or pass laws and enforce those laws to protect the people and to give them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah,
Like,
but
have to
in
pay taxes in
Greenland,
India.
the policemen are insane. They just like wait.
I didn't
for
say it was a perfect
to
system.
go to like they just wait for like someone to go 1 mile over like what they should.
I
And they're like,
yeah.
"Nah,
All right,
you're arrested."
so here we go.
Yeah,
So
my God.
again, they have the blueprint. It doesn't mean they followed the blueprint at all times, okay? And it's still that way, okay? So it was a territory. It was attracting certain groups of people to come to Arkansas. Sometimes people would advertise that Arkansas was this new place for settlers to move to. It was going to be great, that kind of thing. And one such person was a guy named William Woodruff. And here's his awesome portrait and beard with no
It's like
mustache.
Santa.
A little bit.
Why you Santa?
So let me read to you a little bit about Mr. Woodruff. He was from New York, I think,
New York.
or Tennessee. Or he was from
He
Tennessee.
founded Boys, Old Zealand.
Let's see. No. Oh, there it is. All right. All right, so Mr. Woodruff. Okay, I remember some things. That's good. William Woodruff, the oldest of 5 boys, was born in Brookhaven, New York on December 24th, 1795. And by the time he was 15, his father had died and his mother had sent him to work as a printer's apprentice. What is an apprentice?
It's someone who like works for someone else
To learn
like
things.
to like learn.
It's an intern.
Learn a very specific skill. And it is like an internship. And they may or may not get paid. So I think it said low wages in another definition.
leave for only a certain amount of time for the
Right.
Well,
So like a plumber, or it used to be, an apprenticeship would last like 7 years,
It does.
something like that.
I think
now
it
it's
does.
like short.
I don't know. I don't
It's
know.
4 years. My dad.
Okay.
So
So it says William worked hard for the next 7 years to learn all he could about the printing business. And once his apprenticeship was over, he began working for a New York book publisher. Then, like so many other young men of the time, William decided to move west. He spent time in Louisville, Kentucky, and Nashville, Tennessee, working for local newspapers. One boss convinced William to try his luck in the new Arkansas territory, where he could begin a printing business of his own. He used his savings to buy a secondhand printing press and the basic materials he would need once he reached Arkansas Post. After 6 weeks of difficult travel, William finally arrived at the Post and began printing the first issues of the Arkansas Gazette. People in the territory were able to buy a subscription, and that's usually lasts a year, for only $3. 2 years later, when the capital was moved to Little Rock, William and the press moved too. Soon he met and married Jane Eliza Mills, and together they have 11 children. Yeah. So William served as a councilman, treasurer, and postmaster in Little Rock. As a loyal Democrat, he fought against the Union troops who eventually captured the city and forced him out of his home. After the war was over, William returned to Little Rock, and he died there when he was 90 years old.
And what
It'll
year?
last long.
What year did he die?
1885, the year Dr. Pepper was invented, just so you know.
Oh man, he missed out.
I know.
He made it.
But when he was coming to from Tennessee, he created canoes out of they were called dugout canoes, and because the printing press was so heavy, he had to balance it on 2 dugout canoes and float it down the river. That's why it was so heavy.
I love the people that were born in like 1890s or something, and then they lived through the day,
Yeah, that's amazing.
and then they get to like.
So the Arkansas Gazette, and there is archival copy of one of those. He wrote about the issues of the day or what was going on. Do you notice anything interesting about the newspaper print?
It looks like out.
It does, except for something's missing.
The headings.
Yeah. Oh, you mean like the titles?
Yeah.
Okay. What else is missing?
Pictures.
Pictures. Okay.
They had
Well, they could take the time to cut wood cuts and then print those, but it was they were usually crude, meaning they didn't have a lot of detail, because photographs, while by this time they hadn't been invented yet.
I think
1819.
He looks like this.
So photographs were not available, and pictures were time consuming to print. To develop. All right. So he wrote about the problems of drinking, dueling, any political debates. So over time, the Arkansas Gazette became really instrumental in political things. Okay. So this was their internet at the time. Okay. And their internet was really slow, right? Because yes, they're printing all this material, and the people are getting information and feeding it to him. So it may be weeks between newspapers, especially out in the wild west.
Something could bad could happen.
It's
They
like-
print it out in the newspaper, say, "Oh my gosh,
Yes,
a war is coming," and
and it's already happening.
it's already
Wait, it's
happening.
like there's
And then it's
a presidential debate and nobody knows about it, and then like 3 weeks later when it's already over.
So communication is vital, and you have to be patient because today we get on our phones and can get the news. Okay, but it took them weeks, maybe days, weeks, months, depending on where you lived and if there were actual roads to where you lived. In Northwest Arkansas, it was really difficult to get to because mountains, the forests. Now, if you were in Eastern Arkansas, it wasn't so bad because it was pretty flat and you could clear the land pretty easily. Not so much up here.
Give me a newspaper.
Yeah, so depending on where you were in Arkansas, you could get your information maybe quickly, maybe not so quickly.
By the time they get to them, it's gonna be all the other newspaper one already came out. So like,
Well, there was only one. The Arkansas Gazette was the first one. Okay, eventually, there will be more. All right.
Jake, can you come to the office, please? Jake, come to the office.
So one of the first major issues for the Arkansas Territory at the leadership level was moving the capital. Now, the place where they picked the first capital, Arkansas Post, was actually, the geography was really swampy. I said it was near the Arkansas River. And yes, flooding was a big issue there. Plus, there's a lot of mosquitoes. If you've ever been in South Arkansas, East Arkansas, you know the mosquitoes are as big as people. Okay, they're really big. I mean, but there's a lot of them as well. And swamps, because if you have standing water, that's where mosquitoes like to live.
is that like AP or AP?
Arkansas Post.
Oh, yeah.
AP is Arkansas Post. Okay, so Crittenden suggested that they move the capital to a more central location, so central Arkansas,
Even though
at
they're
a
in the
place
middle of Arkansas.
called Little Rock. Now, why might it be important to have your capital in the center of the state? Mackenzie, what do you think?
So if like the other states want to come and like have a war, they have to go all.
Okay, so it could be for protection.
all the
Yes.
news and stuff. Everyone can reach it.
Yes, I think it has a lot to do with access. What
Yeah.
were you gonna say, Ava?
Kind of the same, but like it might be different. Like 'cause it's not too high up, but it's not too above the ground. It's kind of like right in the middle, maybe sometimes.
Oh, the elevation.
Yeah.
So a defensive point. Is that what you're saying?
Well, like it's just not too hot. Like it's kind of like it's just easy access for more to get to. So it's not like too low, but it's not too high.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I think it's so everybody has, I don't want to say equal distance to get to, but at least it's more accessible instead of being in the northwest corner, because those southeast people are going to have to travel a long way to get there. So that's why I think it's central. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Where am I here? Oh, yes, here we are. So it says that James Miller did finally actually come to Little Rock, and he and Crittenden did not have the same goals for Arkansas, and so they clashed big time. And when your leaders can't agree on things, does any progress occur?
Oh,
Not a whole lot. Okay.
wait, they should have said this is our territory. We're on the other side of it.
But if the president is appointing someone, the president has the say there. So Governor Miller did not like the idea of moving to Little Rock, and maybe because Crittenden liked the idea, and so they started forming these sides within Arkansas politics.
The Democrat and the
Not quite. Okay, and there was so much tension between Governor Miller and his dislike to actually want to be there. He resigned later. Okay.
Who took his place?
Oh, well, I'll tell you. So he actually chose not to live in Little Rock once they moved it there. He was like, yeah, I'm not going to live in Little Rock just on principle's sake. So he lived in a town outside of Little Rock, and he commuted to work. So yeah, he returned to live back in East New Hampshire. So while this is going on, other things are happening, and Little Rock is obviously on the Arkansas River, and so those highways were rivers. So they were acting as transport for supplies, and transport for people. That was the fastest way to get around. And I don't know if you've ever been on a steamboat before, but they're not the fastest in the world.
no.
Okay. So, but it was for them. Okay. So if you think about it, if you can imagine in your head, take out all the paved roads, all the interstates, what kind of road situation are we looking
We
at?
got dirt in the driveway or
Dirt, potholes, especially
Grass,
after
mud.
it rains. So grass,
mud.
mud, stumps. If you're starting to clear out the land because there's trees everywhere. So I don't know if you've ever cleared a tree from your yard or not, and you've left a stump. I think my childhood home still has stumps in it where we cleared the trees from, So they're extremely hard to get out, especially these older trees. You know how far their root system goes? You can't get those things out. So there's stumps in the road as well. You have to manage all that. So it was not an easy task to get from place to place in the early 1800s. All right, so rivers were the way to go. And the first steamboat to arrive in Little Rock was called the Eagle. The Eagle.
Why was it called that?
I don't know. So it said one traveler said the men in Little Rock wore 2 pistols and a hunting knife a foot long. So someone was just like observing what people in Little Rock were doing. So you know what I would add here? The steamboats equal the semi trucks of the time period, or something like that. So semi trucks of the time period. So this photograph, it's not a photograph, it's a drawing, is a map of Little Rock. So Dixon, do you mind if you shut your Chromebook? I know you're looking stuff up, but. So let's take a look.
Why does it look like that?
So we can tell this is Little Rock because here's the title down here at the bottom.
It's easy to manage.
So we've got the Arkansas River. What else do you see in the Arkansas River here? Lots of boats here, steamboats.
Water.
Why is it like a bridge?
I see one.
Oh, good question. And remember we talked about those lines of latitude and longitude? So that's how a lot, not all because of the geography, but a lot of cities are laid out in a grid pattern because it's easier to get around. So sometimes that's not possible because there's mountains in the way. So, and rivers, yes.
Is ours laid
So, what do you think?
No.
Not so much. Not so much. Not in West Fork. But here you can see it laid out very straight. So here's the, I believe this is the Capitol building here, or the old state, maybe this is it. The old State House. Yeah, and if you've ever been to Little Rock and you've gone to the old State House, which you still can, it does face the river. It's right on the riverbank. It's really cool. We may look at that later.
Oh, let's go on a field trip to
I would love to, but at this time, we
COVID.
can't. Yeah, COVID won't let us. But I would love to have gone to Little Rock and shown you the old State House. It's pretty cool. Okay. But then, of course, out in at a certain distance, you see wilderness out here. Maybe some big farms over here. Yeah. So it's really interesting to see how they laid out Little Rock back then, because you can compare it to now and see the similarities and also the differences because of the buildings. It's really interesting.
A big
I kind of wish
mountain
we
in the
lived back in
middle.
like after like slaves and stuff, like right before like the Great Depression and stuff,
Mhm.
before the.
It would be an interesting time
No, you
period
don't
for
wish
sure.
that because you wouldn't have Snapchat.
Oh, come on. All right. So would we see, what kind of boats would we see today?
Like-
Speedboats.
Like, well, yeah, some,
Sailboats.
Freighters.
I don't think, but what are we don't call them freighters.
Oh, barge.
Barges, yes.
Barges.
Up and down Arkansas River, tons of barges. Yes, you will see maybe speedboats and sailboats, but today you would see barges.
see, I don't want to go back to that time period. I mean, it would be cool to experience, but I don't want to go back to that time period. I just want to find a really old picture that no one knows about and look at it from back then.
I'm sure it's out there.
It would not be cool.
All
to
right, so
experience.
here's your next subtitle, okay? Rough and tumble politics. So our ladies and gentlemen, okay? So James Miller resigned. That means there's a vacancy opening, okay? So that means the president has to appoint a new territorial governor. So Crittenden is like, please, can I be governor? And President James Monroe at the time was like, no, I'm going to appoint a guy named George Izard.
Friends, he just like goes off the street. Like,
No, usually who the president appoints is usually could be his friends, but maybe gives them an honor because of service that they've done. I think George Izard, I think he was a war hero from the Mexican-American War, maybe. But he too was not really thrilled about coming to Arkansas. I think they're from Pennsylvania. No, Philadelphia. Yeah, Pennsylvania. And even his wife, he was married, his wife stayed in Pennsylvania. She was like, I'm out.
deja vu.
Right? So, come on, presidents. You got to pick people who want to go out there. So, again, GI or George Izard was not excited. Okay? So he was not excited to
Wait.
come.
Well, couldn't he just like turn down the offer?
Yeah, I think you could, but again, being appointed to a high position by the president it'd be very difficult, I think, to turn down.
Yeah, but then again, like you want to stay with your family.
Yeah. So because Crittenden was not excited or was extremely disappointed that he was not picked as governor, he tried to get people on his side like he had done before. And one of the issues at the time was Native Americans. That's what NA stands for. So if you want to spell that out, so you'll know what that means, do so. So he's like, oh yeah, we got to get rid of the Indians, or the savages, as he would call. He called them worthless savages. Okay, which was the thinking. A lot of people agreed with him in that. And one of the groups of Native Americans who lived here were the Quapaw. Okay, so he came up with laws to move the Native Americans out of the area. Huh?
Was he one of the legislators?
Yes. And his position was the Secretary of, I don't want to say Secretary of State, but he was a high-ranking official.
I thought NA standard for North Arkansas.
Oh no,
There's
no,
gonna-
let's get rid of Native Americans. Okay. Well, he called them worthless savages.
Why do we not want to call them Indians? Like, everyone gets mad.
Well, the
Indian-
reason they're called Indians is because when Christopher Columbus came, he thought he was in India. So he misnamed them basically, and it stuck. And I think that Native Americans would rather be called what their real names, their real tribe
You
is.
have to pay taxes.
Okay. All right. So in order to kind of get back, and did George Izzard have anything to do with Robert Crittenden? No. So Robert Crittenden is just probably mad at George Izzard just because of his position and that he didn't get it. Okay.
Probably.
So Robert Crittenden's like, I don't like you, and so I'm going to go get rid of all the worthless savages.
Oh.
And
He
gang-
didn't get his way, so he killed.
Right.
Well, that's what the law
That
is.
sounds like Hillary.
Don't do that in school, kids.
Yeah, so that sounds like Hitler.
He looks like me.
Dude, that looks like a joke.
So no, this is probably Mr. Izzard at a very young age. Okay, so 13, 14 years old. That's the only one I could find of Mr. Izzard. Okay, I'm sure there's different portraits out there, but that's it. All right, so tomorrow we're going to talk about dueling.
Oh no. Gary and Larry.
Scary Mary.
Good thing that's illegal. Why don't we still do today?
Really?
want to get